In a big chemical plant, you'd think stable is the same as safe, right? Everything's running smoothly, so everything's good. But what if I told you that's a dangerous assumption? Today, we're going to dive into this crazy paradox where a plant that looks perfectly fine on the surface might actually be a ticking time bomb. I mean, we're all taught that stability equals safety. It just makes sense. But what if that's fundamentally wrong? What if the absolute worst accidents don't start with flashing lights and blaring alarms, but with silence? A plant that's just quietly humming along, making a perfect product. How could that be the most dangerous place to be? Okay, to really get this, let's look at two different kinds of plants. On one side, you've got your standard distillation plant. The stuff flowing through it is mostly inert, and if you mess up, you can usually fix it. No big deal. But then you have a butadiene plant, or BD plant. And here, the rules are completely different. The raw material itself is super reactive, any damage done is permanent, and the real warning signs, they're not alarms. They're these tiny, subtle changes. It's a whole different ballgame. And this brings us to the core idea, the ghost that haunts every BD plant, silent degradation. This is a state where every single instrument is telling you things are great, pressures are good, temperatures are normal, product quality is perfect. But underneath that calm surface, irreversible damage has already started. The monster is literally growing in the quiet. So let's go ahead and unmask these invisible enemies. It's time to find out what's really operating in the shadows of what looks like a perfectly stable system. You know, this quote from some very experienced operators just says it all. It perfectly captures the danger. It's like you're driving on a long, flat, straight road, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, there's a cliff. The problem wasn't that the cliff appeared suddenly. It was there the whole time. It was just its visibility that was sudden. Okay, so enemy number one, the most relentless one, is polymerization. Just imagine that butadiene molecules are like these super hyperactive Lego bricks that are just desperate to snap together. And when they do, they don't build anything cool. They just form this solid plastic-like gunk that clogs pipes, wrecks equipment, and basically destroys the plant from the inside out. And listen, not all this polymer gunk is created equal. The one they fear the most is called popcorn polymer. Yeah, the name sounds kind of harmless, right? But it is an absolute nightmare. It's porous, which means it soaks up its own fuel, more butadiene, and it's self-propagating. That means once a tiny little seed of this stuff forms, it literally feeds itself and grows, completely out of control. So what kicks this whole process off? Well, it's not just one thing. It's this deadly trio working together. You've got oxygen, even in microscopic amounts, that acts as the initiator, the spark. Then you've got heat, which is the accelerator. It's like stepping on the gas. And finally, you have corroded metal surfaces, which provide the perfect little home for this reaction to settle in and grow. These three things don't just add up. They multiply each other's effect. Now, this is a question that stumps a lot of people. It's a fair one. If the oxygen reading for the whole system is just a few parts per million, I mean, that's basically a rounding error, how in the world can it be the main trigger for a catastrophic failure? And here is the trap. Oxygen doesn't just spread out nice and evenly through the whole system. Nope. It reacts instantly and violently right at the spot where it leaks in, at some tiny crack in a seal or a gasket. This creates a tiny, localized hotspot with a super high concentration of oxygen, and that kicks off the chain reaction long before a diluted sample ever makes its way to an analyzer somewhere else. Your system-wide readings give you a totally false sense of security. The analyzer just confirms the problem has already happened. It doesn't prevent it. So, if you can't trust the alarms to warn you, what can you trust? Well, this takes a totally different way of thinking. It's all about learning to listen for the plant's whispers. You know, in most industries, this is just how safety works. An alarm goes off when a number crosses some preset limit. It's a clear, simple signal that says, hey, something's wrong, you need to react. But in a BD plant, the best operators, they kind of have to ignore that philosophy. They're watching for patterns, not limits. They're looking for something called energy creep. Like, is the plant suddenly needing more and more heat to do the exact same job? They look at temperature noise, not the average reading, but these tiny, erratic little jumps and dips that hint at reaction happening in the background. They notice when the nitrogen system seems restless, or when the solvent starts behaving just a little bit differently. These are the weak signals, the true early warnings. This quote just says it all, doesn't it? The scream is the alarm. That's the point of no return. But the whisper? The whisper is that subtle change in a pattern, that clue that only a really trained, attentive operator is ever going to catch. And listening early, that's the entire job. So this brings us to a really critical difference. Alarms are what we call lagging indicators. They tell you that you've already crashed. Pattern recognition, on the other hand, is a leading indicator. It tells you that you're just starting to skid. One is purely reactive, the other is preventative. All right, so all of this leads to a very, very specific mindset you have to run one of these plants safely. It's less about just following a checklist and more about maintaining this constant state of what you might call healthy paranoia. What it really takes is this huge mental shift. You have to train your brain to stop looking for a single red number on a screen. Instead, you're constantly scanning, looking for connections and patterns across the entire system. Seeing things that look totally harmless on their own, but when you put them together, they start to tell a story. The story of silent degradation. And this is where our own instincts can betray us. Big time. Say your separation efficiency drops. The natural, instinctive thing to do is add more heat, right? But in a BD plant, that just pours gasoline on the fire and accelerates that polymer growth. The instinct to just do something really fast often makes everything way worse. Safety here isn't about quick action, it's about correct, deliberate action. Which brings us to probably the single most important rule for an operator in a BD plant. When things just feel off, when the patterns look strange, when you are not sure what is happening, your first move always is to remove energy, not add it. Turn the heat down, stabilize the situation. In this world, restraint is the highest form of skill. And this brings us right back to where we started. The real danger of a butadiene plant isn't chaos or instability. The true danger is its illusion of stability, that calm, steady face it shows you while it's secretly falling apart inside. So the next time you see a really complex system that looks perfectly calm, ask yourself, what am I not seeing?